6?
2.5 minutes.
It's a public.
We got everybody.
You know what? You started off so nice, but here lately you're really rubbing me the wrong way. Okay.
One's in Williamson Valley.
Okay.
Oh, you got both shoes on, Jack.
Don't worry, everybody.
Yeah, I do, but look at
Everybody rubs.
look at the tongue on the right one compared to the left one.
Can it
See how
tie
much
off?
white? See how much more
Yeah.
tongue you can see? My foot's that swollen. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But I can walk on it a little bit. So
Nice.
Did you get those pictures I sent you, Cory?
yes,
I did.
You didn't see me any pictures.
It just, it makes me go.
You see it everywhere.
Well, but the thing is, it's neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thing that really amazed me, which is regardless of the container, but the red one that was sitting there, by itself. He opened that up, and it had a 2 foot, maybe a little wider aisle down there. Shelves all the way to the ceiling on both sides. Dry boxes. Everything in that container was his wife's Christmas stuff. A 40-foot container full of
Christmas decorations.
and he gets it out every year.
My wife.
And they decorate
Shed
everything and they
for
box it all
Christmas.
back up.
My wife has a whole section for every holiday of the year.
Mhm.
Her
That's
half of the
like those
garage
guys in
and a
Phoenix that
storage
got
unit.
those yards with the trains and all that.
I have a 20-foot just with animal mounts that have yet to be hung.
A 20-foot what?
Conics
Oh.
with animal mounts that have yet to be hung. Because I don't want to be stabbed in the eye walking down the hallway. These
But
are
at
huge,
the, you're at the,
ginormous.
oh, then you're counting it. Come on. So 10 of them up there. Build a house out of it. Cheers. Stack them 10 feet tall.
It's weird how people build them underground, reinforce the ground, and then that's
That's actually pretty cool. There's some pretty cool stuff that they've done with Conic Fly.
And they stock them up. They stack them up, and then make apartments out of them and
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's like when they make the garage, put a cover on
Yeah.
top. Park your RV.
I'm gonna do that at my house.
Better get it engineered.
Oh, we're gonna talk about it in about 10 seconds.
What are you doing here? Get out of here.
Are you ready? Eric?
I didn't see anything.
It's 6.
It's time.
That's what I was just talking about.
Come on, Tracy.
I don't think you need to tell me that.
Cross your fingers.
House was a really nice house.
Yeah.
And then that was his backyard.
You don't have it.
You good? All right, we'd like to call the study session to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Councilmember Kelly.
Present.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Perkins.
here.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Granillo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mendoza.
Here.
Mayor Miller.
Here. Okay, before we get started, I want to announce that next week's council meeting is canceled. It will not happen, so don't show up. You'll be by yourself.
More than one person will show up.
I'm sorry.
It's more than one person will show up. The guy won't be by himself.
All right, item 2, consideration discussion regarding Palantino Valley Rural Co-op Tourism Program with the Arizona Office of Tourism. Miss Titteback. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Mayor?
Good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Got it right here. So Discover Chino Valley. Over the last year or so, I've been working on a tourism campaign to launch some tourism activity in our community. So what this is just an update on where we are at with that right now. The first couple of slides will cover the importance of tourism, and then the following slides will show the page that launches it. Tourism matters. So this is actually Granite Creek Vineyard and some grapes that they grow on their vines over there. Why is tourism important? It injects new money into the economy, boosting businesses and tax revenues, creates new jobs, businesses, events, and attractions, thus helping diversify the local economy. Supports small businesses, enables them to expand, builds vital relationships among and within local communities, helps encourage the development and maintenance of new and existing community amenities. So these are the various different types of tourism. There are more of these, but these are the kind of the top level ones. I won't go through and read all of them to you if you don't mind. You can kind of meander through them yourself. But Chino actually does have quite a few of these. We have recreational tourism, we have agritourism, we have sports tourism, adventure tourism, and definitely some historic. On the right, you'll see a couple of photos of what I would represent that as. Of course, we have Old Home Manor, the shooting range. We have Chino Valley Aviators, Compass Training Center. All of that will end up benefiting from tourism, marketing, and advertising. So this is data from the Arizona Office of Tourism. Basically gives you some top level dollar amounts that the industry took in. This is from 2018. We have a huge opportunity to tap into some of this, even if it's just a small amount over the next couple of years. I think that eventually once we get an RV park and we get some more places to stay out here, we will really be able to tap into some of these tourism dollars. So this is all central region tourism. Chino Valley is basically right in the middle of that. As a matter of fact, we actually argue with Camp Verde, who's the heart of Arizona, because we are more right in the middle than they are. And this next slide here are more regional impacts on a more micro level. Travel spending, job creation, earnings, state and local taxes. Obviously, COVID has not helped any of these numbers. We'll see that go down once they update these. And then this is the first sort of launch that I have done. So this is a rural marketing program with the Arizona Office of Tourism. It's the and they do a 50-50 match. And so the first three is visitarizona.com. That's a marketing campaign through the Arizona Office of Tourism's direct website. And then TripAdvisor, I think you're all aware of that. That's in several different states surrounding us as well. And then Lamar or the billboards in Phoenix. There'll be 2 of those for 2 months. I think I'll probably pick June and July. I haven't decided yet. And then the last is the Local First Arizona Rural Development Council. And that's a really engaging one. So on March 4th, they are coming here. We're meeting with about 15 local stakeholders in the community to sit at a round table and kind of identify what Chino is, what we have to offer, tourism, from tourism to really just capturing the essence of our community. So really exciting stuff, it's fun getting there. So the next step right now is the website, the branding, and the logo, which we have selected a company, just kind of waiting to get their first round on that. So once I get that, that'll launch all of this because I don't have the logo and stuff yet. So anyways, just wanted to give you guys an update on where we were at in the tourism campaign. Any questions?
What is the logo?
So will be discoverchinovalley.org. And so that website developer, what they do is they create a brand for the tourism, for our tourism, it's separate from the town. So it'll have its own logo, its own colors, its own website, its own pages. So once I get all of that, that'll kind of feed all of this. So it won't be the town of Chino Valley, it'll be Discover Chino Valley.
And I'm sorry, but you were successful in your 50-50 grant?
Yes, I was.
Good job.
Good.
Thank you. So anyways, I'm really excited about this. And I think we're going to see some fun stuff come out of it and some new dollars coming into town and it also really helps the community come together because you really have to do community outreach programs to get everybody engaged, and it's just going to head us in another great direction. So that's it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, item 3. Consideration and discussion regarding amending the Town of Chino Valley Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 154 by amending Section 2.1, meanings of words and terms, and Section 4.9 outdoor storage by adding a definition and regulations of a metal storage container. Will. Not you, Will. Oh, the big Will.
Mayor, members of the council, how's it going?
Good.
Will was listed there since he was the one that presented to Planning Commission. So his name follows the item, but I'm going to present it tonight. Before you is the text draft language for Connex boxes. So if I can just go through some of the reasons why we're proposing this text amendment. Connex boxes have been allowed in the past. As you drive through town, you can see quite a few Connex boxes next to properties, for better or worse. The current UDO, though, has no provision to allow Connex boxes. There's a nebulous statement within the residential sections underneath the conditional use permit section that says that since no list is complete, and I've read this to the UDO subcommittee members, since no list is complete, the zoning administrator has the authority to determine basically what process uses would follow if they should be allowed in that zoning district. I've opted for a conditional use permit that places the burden of approval on the Planning Commission and Council. The reason Connex boxes have been allowed in the past is policy letters were written and they were followed, and these policy letters were used to grant authority for the Connex boxes, but that's not how authority to place Connex boxes should be granted. It should go through a text amendment process where the proposal is codified in our zoning ordinance and it is adopted by council instead of left to government officials. So the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance Subcommittee has met at least 3 times on this. We met February 26, 2020 of last year, where I brought to their attention that Connex boxes, they're not listed in our code. They're not approvable. I can't just approve them. And it was decided then that we would go forward with some language. So over the next few months, staff drafted the language, and we the draft language to the UDO subcommittee on October 28th. After that meeting, we placed it on the Planning Commission meeting following guidance that we'd received, and the Planning Commission heard and made a recommendation to Town Council in December with a 7-0 vote. Members of the council felt that the language needed to be revised and revisited, so we pulled it off the agenda and we met again. We were initially scheduled to meet in January, but the snowstorm kept us from meeting. So we postponed it a week to February 3rd. So we met February 3rd of this month to discuss some of the language. Some of the council members that attended that meeting, they had some ideas of things that they wanted changed, but we haven't made any changes to the language before you. We wanted to go through and make the changes in one go as opposed to piecemeal. So as we go through the language tonight, if you have questions, comments, discussion points, I have the building official here to answer questions related to the building code and what he is able to approve or not approve, and his recommendations of basically what we're seeing and if there's any additions that he would like to see added in. We also have Will Dingy here who can answer questions, and I'll be obviously hosting the discussion. So with that, can you bring up the language?
Does everybody have a copy of the language?
Yes, sir. I do. I do. Got yours?
You're fine.
It was in the package. got the red markings on it.
So going forward, did any council members have any specific section of the language they wanted to talk about, or do you want me to go through? What would you like me to do?
2B is a good start.
Ma'am?
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Was there not something somewhere where a 5-foot setback was actually the accepted setback?
That's actually somewhere else in the code when it relates to accessory structures. There's a 5-foot setback from side and rear yard when sheds and such were placed. So when these have been placed, that's what we've been following.
So this does not pertain to tractor trailers or anything with axles and wheels. Is that correct?
No, this is strictly for Conex boxes.
Okay.
So 4.2 and 4.9, 5.
I guess, start this. I think whenever something comes to the council, we have to figure out what's driving this? Why is this becoming in the forefront? Whether it's staff driven, council driven, public driven, or we recognize that this could be a wreck further down the road. So a preventive kind of issue. I think that this is a little bit on preventive. Reasoning for going down this road, as well as what you're saying staff wise, if it's not in the code, we really can't regulate it till we get containers in the code.
Well, no, that's not what I said. So if it's not in the code, it's prohibited, and we can regulate that, and we have been regulating it. So because Conex boxes are not specifically mentioned, and we don't see them as structures, they're not in the building code, so they're technically not structures. So we don't view them as sheds. I mean, if they were a structure, we could view it as a shed, and then I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. But because Conex boxes are a metal storage container, they're not viewed as a shed, but them as a structure. We need to have something in our code that would allow me to issue a land use, place them on their property. Because if it's not in the zoning ordinance, then it's prohibited. So as far as why we're bringing this forward, we do get quite a few people asking for place Conex boxes on their property. But the only method I have of approving it is requiring them to go through a conditional use permit based on that statement in the code.
Is there a lot of complaints about them?
I wouldn't say complaints, just.
No, I meant like a neighbor complaining because they've got 2 or 3 or whatever.
I don't know specifically of anybody complaining about Conex boxes.
Who's talking where?
It was Will.
Oh,
Hi, Will with the town. We don't necessarily get complaints, or I haven't been privy to many complaints regarding placement of Conex boxes. I know we've had a few just specifically with obstructions of views from neighboring properties. But as far as most recent, we get a lot of complaints regarding process forward because the Conex box, the approval is similar to a zone change, about a 2 month time frame to get that before council So that's where a lot of the complaints are stemming at this point in time.
Could you repeat that again? I'm not, you get the complaints because,
Most of it's because of the board and how weak. But we've gotten a couple code complaints just because of where people have placed them in the past, just specifically regarding views. Yeah.
okay.
So this would correct that and give you the authority to give them okay. Is
Say
that
no.
correct?
So yeah, this language would allow us to issue a land use. We would then go out and make sure it's outside of the required setbacks.
Okay.
In this case, 5 feet from the property line, as that is the accessory structure setback. It's the least restrictive setback. The other one is 10 feet based on SR1, and then be a little bit larger than that.
I understand. Thank you.
And then concerning the blocking of the view, will that placement be able to predict that or?
Boxes on there.
Okay.
So for everybody else's information on the council, to share a little bit about what we've been going through in the UDO subcommittee is, I know I have horribly. Every time we get together, I go home and I get more confused and I get confused with what my thought is on regulating. Along with developing an approval for people to be able to do this, we've been looking at what is realistic, what is acceptable to neighbors, and that for how much. Can you have, if you have an acre of ground, for instance, can you have one 20-foot cargo container on there? Or can you have two 40-foot cargo containers on there? What is appropriate for 1 acre of ground? If you have 2.5 acres, what's appropriate? I think the use of them is easy. We've talked to Josh about that. We've talked to the building inspector, and I think I understand, I think Corey does, they are storage containers. They aren't workshops. You know, they aren't supposed to have an air conditioner and lights and a beer fridge. But they're storage containers for people to use to put their animal feed in, to put their quads in, you know, something like that. I guess where I go to, the more I think about this is, and we talked a little bit at the last time that Dan was here, was, you know, what's it cost to build a garage in square feet, Jack? You know?
Well, you're out.
Yeah, I mean,
Anywhere from 70 to 100, depends on what you're doing inside.
okay. And a person can put a cargo box on their property for $10 a square foot, 15. So my concern is to try to put something in here that's going to be acceptable, but also not pricing our residents out of the market on being able to have storage, you know, have an area to put things. Not everybody can afford to spend $70 a square foot on storage, but they can't afford the other. So that's kind of a little background on where we've been in the UDO subcommittee. And we've walked out of, I have walked out of the meeting thinking, we got it figured out. And then I go home and I think about it and I come back and go, oh man, I'm not sure. But it's very hard for me to set regulation for someone else. So that's the difficulty I've had.
The other thing that's been brought up is how properties look. And having a container with their personal belongings in the container looks a whole lot better, whether it's residential or commercial, than scattered out in a
Around the
yard.
yard, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this goes back to how many do you allow? And everybody's needs, you got the Sanford and Sons, and then you got the ones that, the 8x8 tin shed is all they need. Either way, cosmetically, I think one aspect that we kind of zeroed in on is requiring them to be painted, no matter where they go. So that's one of the things I think that get checked off the list kind of quickly is so you don't see Chum Sway, and we've all seen the names on it.
All the graffiti and blah, blah.
Graffiti that they need to be
Similar to the primary structure.
either to the structure or to a earthen,
Yeah.
Blend.
earth tones.
Blend with the surroundings.
What's the cost on something like that? Do those things have to be pickled before you can paint them, or are the surfaces okay just for, I mean, the average person gonna jump out there and, okay, Annie, what did it cost you?
$500 for 4.
Okay,
For 4 of them?
Now granted, they are next to each other, so it doesn't count the
So
middle,
about $125 a piece.
top and sides.
I mean, if you go down to like Keto Valley, none of those houses got garages on them. But the ones that don't have Conex boxes, like you're saying, have junk all around the house. And the Conex box looks a lot much better than all the junk laying around the house.
So now we get into a quantity issue. I look at these more like the storage and fall more under the storage guidelines of what we have. And I think what regulates how many sheds you can have is a single shed structure in, see if I listen right here, a single shed measurement can be a maximum of how many, 160?
Without requiring a building permit?
Without, yes,
200.
200.
And you can have 2 or 3 or 4 of those, right?
Up to a certain percentage of your coverage of your property.
That's correct.
So that's just an idea, going more, looking at them as sheds and go with the same code that we have as sheds and classify them as a shed. And again, limiting, because what was that, 8 by 20 is going to be
160.
yes. So that's right close to your maximum shed size on a 20-foot container. So it would limit residential properties from having the 40-footers. They'd have to be the 20-footers, but you could cover up to what percentage of the property?
It's depending on the zone.
Depending on the zoning. Okay.
I can look it up real quick.
But I think on a commercial property, you're looking at the same thing. It's still 200 square feet to not have a permit.
Actually,
Commercial's less.
so commercial is 120.
Oh, commercial, so it's even less.
less.
Wow.
Who's gonna approve whether you're blocking somebody's view or not?
We
That's
have-
impossible.
We have
You're
to
not gonna-
design regulations.
Can't do it. I mean, I've got 3 sheds across my property I'd like to replace. They're old and they're beat up. I can put a 40-foot container, paint the ends of it. Nobody'd even know they were there.
Yeah. With that, we have no design review regulations as it is now.
So the only thing we're dealing with here is complaint driven, and we're not getting any complaints except for the fact of how long it takes to get them approved. Is that right, Will?
It's more than that. So our code is prohibitive in nature, meaning if it's not listed there, it's prohibited. And Conex boxes, as they are not a structure, cannot be treated as a shed because they're not a structure. So in order to approve and allow people to start placing Conex boxes on their property in a manner that they are going to be treated as storage sheds, even though they're not a structure, requires council action to add something into the code, allowing me to recognize the Conex box as
As a shed.
and in that manner. And so what we have done is drafted language to eliminate some of the things that people which is turn them into paint booths, turn them into workshops, and things like that. That would not be.
And who's gonna enforce that? Code enforcement gonna do that?
Code enforcement doesn't, and then we would also, we would go out and make sure it is set with the setback. I'm talking too loud. Oh, you got turned down on me. Yeah, so code enforcement, that is what they do right now. And they will continue to do a good job doing that.
Okay.
So if it's the same, oh, good.
Go ahead.
So if it's the same size and you allow electric services to be run to it, then why don't you just, you can put for lighting purposes only.
Yeah, so like an exterior light or whatnot, that's one of the things that we had, well, that's one of the things we had originally had in there. And after the discussion at the last meeting, if Dan, do you want to address that?
Yeah, basically, last year at subcommittee, we discussed this. It don't fall under jurisdiction of the building code because it's not a structure, so we can't issue a permit. Sorry. Heard the mayor about following instructions. So I apologize. During the discussion at the last meeting, a subcommittee meeting, it was, I don't know that I hadn't been here and discussed it, and we hadn't touched on the fact that these are not regulated by the building code because they're not recognized as a structure. It's just a shipping container. That's all it ever is. That's all it ever will be, regardless of what they do with it. So we do not and have not issued permits for electrical to or in these boxes in the past, and we wouldn't.
So I brought up when that was brought to the table, I said, well, what if someone went to an engineer and had them draw this up and stamp it to put electrical in a container, proper grounding, so on and so forth. And Dan says, okay, now you've gotten that. Now we can put lights in, and now you've created another animal. So next thing goes the drill press and the bandsaw and the beer fridge, and and now it's a building. So I can see where there's got to be a stopping point. I don't see not letting, in this day and age, I don't see not letting someone put grid power lights in as being a problem. I mean, there's LED lights, battery operated these days, that can light up one of those things with no problem when somebody goes out to feed their horses or get their quad in and out or whatever they want to do as far as a storage situation. I don't see that as being a problem. My only, like I said before, my only thing right now is how much is allowed? And then where? Another thing we talked about was, I actually said, well, what if a person on commercial property, what if we said we equate it to square footage of building? So you have a 2,000 square foot building, you can have one 40-foot cargo container. You have 4,000 square foot, you can have another 40-foot storage container. But then here again, we kind of see it as it goes. We're looking at Bunker's place down there next to Corey. He's got a half a dozen storage containers on that piece of property with no building. He doesn't need a building. No one works there. It's just a storage yard. Mm-hmm. And then that comes up to what Corey said. Well, do you want all the junk they store, tires and whatever else they might have in those storage containers for the trucking company? Do you want it just all sitting around the yard in a screened fence yard? Or would you rather have them have their storage containers there that they keep it in?
Good question. Good point.
But you don't necessarily, and here again, zone the same for the most part, you don't necessarily want that same atmosphere on our main drag in town.
Right.
So you have we talked about, okay, how do you differentiate now commercial light that's in different areas, the commercial light that's right on the highway compared to the commercial light that's an 1/8 mile off the highway behind a bunch of other buildings and isn't an eyesore to the traffic, coming through town. It makes it difficult.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, did we already handled the commercial industrial down the highway Conex box issues, right?
Nope.
With the fencing, we already went through all that.
Well, we've
stirred the
discussed
pot.
everything,
Oh my gosh.
but we haven't made any
Yeah, we
decisions.
stirred the pot about a year ago.
We discussed the storage area, right, with the screened-in fence for
Screened in, yeah.
commercial.
And that if
Not-
there was a,
That's not Connex,
the
just
Conex
as,
boxes had to be at the level of the building, adjacent to the building or behind it.
oh yeah, I do remember talking about that somewhere back in the past.
Thank you. I was going crazy.
I think that's before I got here.
Could have been.
Yeah.
You remember talking about, Corey? Because we were,
Nothing whatsoever.
It wasn't that long
When
ago.
we were, a couple years back, when we were on the subject of cleaning up the main
Yeah.
highway, in conversation, it came up during one of the
Oh, I thought
meetings.
it went further
it might have been a
than
study session topic too. I don't remember.
Well, and that's where, and that was a big learning experience for me, is that what Josh has brought to the table is that when they have zoning, it says this is what's allowed in the zoning. If it doesn't say it's allowed, then it's not allowed. And I went,
Yeah,
oh, so
that's-
you're saying that if you don't tell me I can't. And he said, yeah, that's how it works in the zoning. It's not like you need to see a sign that says no hunting or no trespassing. If it doesn't say come on in, that means no trespassing. And
I don't remember. Yeah, I do remember talking about it, but I don't remember why.
We did adopt the property maintenance code. We moved it from the UDO into the town code. Is that what you're referring to?
Possibly does it include Conex boxes or structures being adjacent to the primary structure and being fenced in along the commercial corridor on the 89?
I don't remember that in there.
What is in there?
The property maintenance deals with code enforcement and when they can issue a citation for a property that is not kept up. It also deals with vehicles and junk around the yards and things like that. So our code, one of the things, it's not clear in summaries, but one of the things that is very clear on is screening of outdoor storage and what outdoor storage is defined as. So those are very clear in our code.
So if it's just a storage container, what is the physical modifications that could be done?
None.
They can't-
You can,
So
what we're proposing is you can place them on your property. You just need to meet the minimum setbacks. We'll go out and we'll make sure they meet the setbacks when they're placed, that they're painted. We're going to remove the electrical portion of it based on the recommendation and advice from our building official. And then right now we're proposing a certain amount based on the zoning that they're in. But it's whatever you want it to say. So
Just to summarize, we're saying we're good with Connex box not being a structure, it's being a storage container. No electrical, no modifications. The problem that lays on the table is how much. And then yours was, did you have issue with this?
No, and I'm actually trying to avoid this whole conditional use thing. To me, we're just overstepping. If we need to me, I can look at these Connex boxes as the same as whether it be a wooden shed or a steel box. And you can't go and just bootleg your electric into your wooden shed either. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And as code enforcement, sees, wires running in, well then, that's that.
So adoption of this language would eliminate my need to require a conditional use permit. The whole reason I've been requiring a conditional use permit is because that's the only way I have right now, based on our code, to allow.
because it's not listed.
Okay, so we create the definition of the,
That's what this does.
of the story, of the Connex
Mhm.
to be the same definition as a storage shed.
We're adding in a definition called metal storage container, and then that is being included in the outdoor storage section to allow for Conex boxes to be placed outright. The question is, how much do you want to allow?
How many square feet?
Okay,
And then I
same,
can,
same thing as a storage shed on any residential,
so,
whatever
to-
that is.
so up to
Go with that
50%
same-
of an entire
Just-
lot,
Huh?
up to 50% of the lot?
If someone wants to cover in again, wooden sheds, they could do that in 50% of the lot, right?
Well, the house, minus the house and,
Okay, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing though, right? Because they could do, whether it be 20-foot Connex boxes or it'd be 20-foot wooden sheds.
well, a Conex box is never going to be a shed per se because it's not a structure, which is why we're including the
Is a
definition
shed
of
a
metal
structure?
storage container. Yes, the shed is, and they are constructed to building code standard. So sheds are structures. So that's why we're proposing a definition for metal storage container and to allow for the Conex boxes outright.
We can have physical modifications and electrical on sheds going through permitting processes. We can't through storage containers because it's just a storage container. That's all it is.
Right.
So you can't do anything with it.
If a tornado comes, I'm going.
So what is it,
to
two
Conex
20
boxes.
footers or one 40 footer per property or whatever the size? It'll never be more than a storage shed.
Right.
Just a storage shed.
But we're gonna limit the size like this and
What size are we gonna?
SR1 up to 2.5 are only allowed 1 20-foot.
If you want to allow more, Lon and Corey are expressing a desire to allow more. I'm not married to any of the
Well,
language.
and-
You need to tell me
What
what
you're
you
seeing
want me to
here,
write.
yeah, and just to, Josh isn't dictating this.
Gotcha.
These are things that we put in there through our UDO subcommittee meetings. That's what I said at the beginning is then I started having second thoughts
Yeah.
and go, are we being, are we overstepping?
The
You
way
know?
my lot is set out and the way the fences are done and everything, I can put 240s and you'll never even know they're there. And what happens with anywhere in the United States, they're making these things into apartment houses and stuff. Are we gonna say right now, don't come to Chino Valley with one because we won't approve it?
Yes.
That's not fair to anybody.
Well, I think if somebody came to the town, and the building official can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they had an architect and an engineer design their home that incorporated Conex box material as a building material, and it was engineered for the entire structure at that point with footers and foundation and everything else, it is something that we could review and we could approve. Am I wrong?
Oh, that's correct.
So
That's through a
the
building.
problem here is people are buying these containers and they're dropping them on their lots. And then they're modifying them, turning them into paint booths and whatever else.
Party room.
So
I mean, we've got railroad cars sitting on lots around here and one of them, a caboose is turned into an apartment and everything else. Yeah, we need to control that, but
staff is not against or for Conex boxes being used for containers. I figured that there was an issue when people were coming in asking for Conex boxes, but we have no provision in our code for them, which is why I requested that we add something in to allow it. That's the whole purpose of this language is
I
to
see the
allow.
allowance, but I'm not sure I can go along with all the restrictions,
On square footage.
square footage.
I'm sorry, Tom, what was that?
The square footage restrictions, I mean, there are lots available. Mine, for one, as an example, I could put 240s on there, you'd never know it.
Well, like Lon said, it's $10 a square foot versus a
Yeah,
garage or a shed is $100
Well, I
a
said
square
70,
foot.
but you can probably get by for 50, you know.
I mean, there's a gentleman over in Prescott
Cheap.
Valley off 169 that's building offices out of these things, and I'm guessing they're approved because they've got lights and windows.
There's some towns,
So they're engineered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the assumption.
some towns back east are actually using these as homeless shelters. They're stacking them, building them, making complexes out of Conex boxes and then furnishing them and putting homeless people in them.
Okay, but what,
Back east.
what,
Chino Valley.
what do we want in Chino Valley?
Valley.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just that cleared it up that yes, you come in and you engineer it and you go through the whole process. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a storage container.
Right.
We know what the description of one is. So what are the limits within a residential, or commercial? How many can you have? What size can you have? I think I didn't hear any objection requiring to be painted. So appearance wise, that's covered. Just what is the quantity then at that point? And with the setbacks on them, would the setbacks not be the same setbacks that we have for storage sheds?
That's up to you. If you want us to require the building setbacks, which are more restrictive than the accessory structure setbacks, we can do that, or we can continue to look at it as an accessory type thing and measure the less restrictive setback. That's
I look at
completely
it
up
as
to
an
you.
accessory thing myself.
I do too.
Yes, agreed.
I'll agree with that, but especially if we open it up to more square footage. If I move in 4 40-foot cargo containers on my property and I set them up side by side, they're not going anywhere.
Right?
They're not going anywhere. Okay, they're going to be there. So I think in that case, for having respect for our neighbors, we should consider the same setback that a garage would be built at.
I see.
Rather
So
than-
you're saying it becomes a permanent structure more than, like putting the RV, parking your RV next to the fence.
Right.
I agree with that.
I agree with that too.
Sure.
I'm gonna agree with everything.
That would be my thought there.
And I do
Mine are
understand what
open.
he's saying.
Well, that's it.
And that's something that they've been there longer than I've been alive. I'm assuming. They're
Well,
not going anywhere.
You're correct. They're
They're
not going
permanent.
anywhere because the cost to move is as much as the unit cost. It's expensive to move it.
It is.
So they're gonna be there
I
permanently.
see it as a permanent structure.
But you have to have the
Well,
the proper drainage.
I agree
On
with the
it.
setback.
Well,
Right.
that now becomes a whole nother.
Drainage, you mean on the ground, the flood drainage?
They'll float, get enough water.
Ships are running into them all the time in the ocean.
Just
It's gonna
don't
take a
leave
lot of
bag
water to float.
Creep by the door, not the door all the way.
Put footers in it.
So I mean, that's kind of a side note that we were just talking about, but I would say if you're only gonna, if you're only allowing 120 footer and you want to use it as a utility, whatever that was called, and maybe have it a 5-foot setback, that would be one thing. But if we're gonna allow more than that, then I think that here again, out of respect for the neighbor, rather than having it 5 foot off their fence line, that it should be treated more like a permanent structure would be.
But then now we're just creating a double standard there. So if
Why?
you're gonna have one, it can be at 5. You're gonna have more than one, it's gotta be at,
Oh, no. I'm saying right now, what we had on here, that a 1 acre lot could only have one
oh, I see what
20
you're
by
saying.
8. Okay, that wouldn't be so bad, I guess, something like that. But if you're going to, and that truly would be easily moved if a person wanted to move it. But if you go in and you set a couple of 40s in there, chances are they're going to be there
The only,
until you move or sell the property or whatever.
the only problem I would see with that, with it being 5 foot off the fence, that's a great place to store crap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Between the Connex, with 5 foot,
And,
where if it was 25 foot, it'd be a little more difficult. And then maintaining weeds and whatever. So I, after what you said, I'm thinking more, I know I said I agree with you, but I'm thinking more towards the 25 setback.
So the more restrictive.
Or the.
Whatever the
Whatever the
setback is.
Whatever the setback is for a building, we
Or-
would do the same thing for the cargo.
Yeah.
Side yard, minimum side yard in SR1 is
10.
10 feet.
10 feet.
Rear yard, 20 feet.
At least that would maybe not be a catch-all like a 5-foot chunk
Mhm.
would.
Yep.
Yeah,
Room to
those-
get a mower in.
those setbacks.
So we're gonna agree on that one.
So far we've agreed on color.
And 5 and 10 foot.
10 foot.
We're doing good.
Or whatever the setbacks are
Or
for that
20.
For
neighborhood.
that,
Setback for permanent
So-
structure, correct?
but we're not
Long, you're
restricting
thinking-
size.
You're thinking a 10 by 20, a 200, which is, no, they're 8 by 20, it's 160 square feet. You don't think you think that's limited then?
So okay, so we're kind of ditching the idea of it not matching the storage shed or accessory building size. We'll look at these as its own, it's its own thing.
Yes.
Connex is Connex.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe a conics is what we call it.
And I just, I sent them to Corey before the meeting, just because I had, but I went down last week, and I bought some shelving off the guy. And he's down on, Happy Valley Road and 85th, somewhere in there. It's a rural area, but it's building up around there pretty good. 1.25 acre lots. And real nice house out in front, go in the driveway where the garage is and go through his double gates, and then you're in his backyard. Very clean lot. He's got 2 cargo containers in the back right-hand corner that are probably 25 feet apart. And then he's got a roof built.
In between.
He's got lights in there and all his electrical and everything. I mean, it's a nice little lean-to shop. And then he had probably 20 foot from that, he had the other cargo container where all his wife's Christmas stuff was, with his motorhome parked next to it and all. And I mean, I'm looking at that going, it was clean. All his stuff was put away. You know, everything was, it really was,
And smart.
you couldn't have asked the man to doll up his back area any more than he already had. And so there again, that starts putting me back into the thinking, again, I'm going, man, you know, what is wrong with this? I doubt that he engineered the shed that he built between the two. So, you know, you can have a code for that or whatever, or have to have something like that standalone, whatever it might be, as a lean-to, which you have to have engineered drawings to build something like that in town, correct? If you want to build a parking structure or storage structure, you have to do it. So nothing changes. It just made me think, you know, are we, I don't want to do something we're going to regret. And, you know, you go to somebody's house, you say, look, you got to clean up your junk. The neighbor's complaining about it. Well, if you let me put in a cargo container here, I could put it all inside there and it wouldn't be where my neighbor could see it. I can't afford to build a $100,000 garage.
Here's an idea. What if you said 220s for SR1 is what we're talking, right?
Well, no, so we have it split up. So SR1, SR 2.5, the SR1 zones, we have said one container, 20 foot max.
Right. So if we said 220s,
The ag zones, we had it limited to 40 foot. So we've increased it for the ag zones because they're,
I'm still talking about residential here with an acre. If we did 220s, that would keep you under the size of 2 sheds. You know, it'd keep you under the 200 square foot.
But is there any difference between 220s or 140?
No, really, not in I was going there next, but you didn't give me a chance to get there.
No, the only thing you would be doing by doing the 20s is, like you said, you're now in comparison, you're paralleling the building code for a 200-foot shed that doesn't need a permit.
200 square foot. And then what I was gonna say, but then if you're gonna allow that, then what is a 560 is what is 8 by 40? What's 400?
320.
220?
320.
320.
320, whatever the hell it is.
And in town, there are some with the 3 containers set in like a horseshoe, and then they've bought an existing manufactured canvas or, a tent type structure that sits right in the middle of them and they're not connected. And it's just storage of stuff, cars and trucks and equipment. That's all they use it for.
That's the point of them though, isn't it?
Well, that's where they start taking them to the next level.
Paint
And
booths.
to me, now you're creating a structure. When you put
You put
that,
a roof
when you
over
put
it.
that roof over, you created a structure.
I was kind of being facetious.
You
Now,
created
Josh-
something that could fly,
Let's go to future developments. Future developments that come in that have HOAs and that they can disallow or allow whatever they want.
Well, yeah, we don't care what CCNRs say though. Specifically as a town, that's a civil matter. So it would be owner suing property owner. The town literally doesn't care what's in your HOA.
I realize that. I guess what I'm saying though is future developments, a developer coming in that sees what our code is that allows 2 20-foot cargo containers on the property, they can write into their CCNRs that there's no storage containers allowed.
They can do that.
Yes.
But if somebody in that neighborhood comes in and says, hey, Josh, I want a Conex box metal storage container, I'm going to be like, okay, here's the form to fill out for your land use permit. We'll be out to,
Oh, I see.
because I don't care what the HOA says.
And then
And
he's
then
got
they
to
would
fight
just
with his
pay the fine.
neighbors. Okay.
Yeah, fight with HOA.
again,
Yeah, so
I don't,
Good deterrent though.
I'm trying to prevent them from having to come in and ask you anything as far as the containers go.
well, they do need to come in so that we can make sure they meet the setbacks. And that's what we do that already with all the other sheds and buildings, homes, garages. We already do that.
Okay, but with just the shed you go by,
Yeah, it's with a land use permit. So they would come in, they'd be issued a land use permit. Will or one of the other planners in the past would go out and they would make sure it met the minimum setback.
okay. So that's already something that's in place.
That's great.
So the little 4-foot by 8-foot shed that you buy, that sheet metal, screw it together, they need to come in and get a permit for that? Is that what I think I just heard?
They wouldn't need a building permit. They need a land use permit and we would measure the
Land
setbacks.
use, oh, okay.
We typically turn those out in 48 hours. So they're pretty quick turnaround.
Tom is about to blow a cork.
But that's already in our code.
Yeah, we already do that.
Okay.
So here's a suggestion. What if we said 220s and the 1 acre residential? And we let it ride a while and see if it works or if people are upset or people want more, and then we could revisit it.
I'm more inclined to go that route.
Yeah.
It's complaint
All the
driven. so-
revisiting things doesn't seem to happen.
I mean, if there's a lot of complaints about it, then we can maybe allow more. I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna, it's kind of like going swimming. Is the water warm enough? I know you got to jump in and find out.
Yeah.
Are we possibly micromanaging this or, a question?
To, on the SR1, 2 20-footers.
Instead of 140.
I
Why
still
can-
see the difference.
What's the difference? 140 or?
The size,
Right,
just
but
the
it's-
size.
We're gonna be 16.
I agree. I just threw out an idea. You don't have to beat me up.
Listen.
No. I'm just saying, I don't know, maybe because it would be the same as 2 small sheds versus 1 huge shed. Is the only thing I was thinking. But it doesn't make any difference. If you want to go 220s or 140, I'm good with that.
Yeah. What if they put them back to back or something, or maybe 140?
Yeah, they could do that. If you allowed them 220s, they could stick them in the end and you still got 140 anyway.
And I like the mayor's thought, Jack, that let's get something out, simple, and see what flack we get. What noise resistance. The guys, I guess Josh and Will are saying, we're not getting a huge, terrible amount of complaints on the existing containers.
140 is cheaper than 220s.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
By quite a bit.
I was going by the 10 square foot rule.
When we revisited the sign ordinance a year and a half ago, we put a sunset clause in there to revisit it this year. If you want, we can put that in there. to revisit it in 2 years, give it 2 years, and then bring it back to you.
So they come in sizes of 20, 28, or 20, 24, every 2 feet, right? Up to 40 footers.
No, they come
They're
in,
pretty much 20s or 40s.
Yeah.
they got some 10s and 30s out,
I
but
think they got
they're
28
kind of rare.
footers. I think they got 28 footers also.
Maybe that's why I'm thinking it's a 30s at 28. Could be.
Because they come from the ocean shipping businesses, kind of really, where they, after they wear out their ocean time, they sell them off to the people.
So
Right.
40 by 8 is 320. So if we just put a 320
Square foot.
worth of,
Or, yeah, you can say 220s or 140 or whatever, and just see how it flies.
Yeah, put the
Yeah.
sunset clause in there, revisit it next year and see how
Yeah.
many complaints we got.
Amen.
so is that a good number for a 1 acre? And then what do we do for the properties that are under 1 acre?
Are they gonna have the setbacks?
My recommendation would be under 1 acre, no, but that's just me. That's my recommendation.
Then I would, because I still would like to see their stuff in the shed and not scattered.
Or about 120 footer on a
Then
half
we go
acre?
to 120 footer.
Half acre and above, or
They still have
And
to
like-
meet their setbacks.
Have to have the setbacks.
to see what kind of ripples we get in a year or 2 years, whatever. Because if we're not getting noise on it now,
If that's small a lot, they're probably gonna go to Home Depot and buy the 4 by 8 anyway.
We'll get noise once we start putting in restrictions.
Yes.
Okay. So now do we move up the zoning? Just, okay, so they're under 1 acre, and the 1 acre, what is our next?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily just treat it with by the 1 acre. I would leave it as the SR zones, excluding the SR 0.16, and have the SR 0.16 have their own, which is the 1 container. And then the next set would be agriculture zones.
because the ag would legitimately, by being ag, have more need for storage.
Well, the ag zones
See.
are residential zones.
Yeah. Well, the ARs.
They're called agriculture residential, AR. So they are residential zones for the intents and purposes of our code. They just allow additional uses.
So SR 2.5 would be the same as SR 1.
That's correct.
Taking it
That's my-
220.
220s.
See, and I think there's a difference. I
Big difference.
you know, I think there's a difference. It may be the same zoning, but I think that there's a difference if someone has 2.5 acres on what they should be able to use their property for and do with it than 1 acre. They're a lot less apt to be intrusive on their neighbors because there's more area between homes and so on and so forth. And then you'll go from that to 5 acre parcels. So there again, that's a decision.
240 footers on 2.5 acres, that's nothing.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you double up 4 20 footers
The
on
.16 doesn't really have enough room to put a 20
1.16.
footer.
You can't.
Unless it's completely, the property completely laid out correctly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and that's it. It's got to meet setbacks.
Yep.
So if it can't meet setbacks, they
max
can't
it
do
doesn't
it.
go. And the 1 acre guys can have 220s and go on. And paint them to match the dirt.
And your SR1 or your SR, you're saying it goes up to your 2.5?
So in the SRs, there's SR 0.16, which we've talked about, 1 container. There's SR1, SR 1.6, SR2, SR 2.5. So there's 5, there's 4 total. There's 5 total zones there.
Mayor, if I may. Josh, do each of those have their own lot coverage restrictions?
Lot coverage restrictions, I'll check 0.16, but SR1 all the way up through, I believe AR5 is 50%. I'll double check that.
Because I think, I know Vice Mayor, you brought that up. Maybe that's something you all should explore a little bit in the discussion, a little bit more about lot coverages, because that is already regulated. And would seem like a reasonable discussion to have.
50% lot coverage would be huge. And then with your setbacks already there, I can't imagine reaching that.
In Connex.
Right.
Even,
But perhaps not the same lot coverage, but maybe you do it by lot coverage instead of trying to.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Instead of saying 240 footers, say X percentage of your lot.
So not to exceed 50, not to exceed coverage.
Yeah, so it's interesting. All of these zoning districts, SR 0.16, SR1, SR 1.6, and then AR4 and AR5 all have a 50% coverage allowance. SR2 and SR 2.5, the maximum is 40%. I don't know why that's in there like that. So that'll be something else to change.
Somewhere in the last 50 years.
So lot coverage is still an enforced.
Yeah, we enforce the lot coverage. If that's how you want to handle it, we can handle it that way.
We'll make sure that it's. Okay. So then what would the next zoning be? Are we now into?
So residentially, you want to handle it by lot coverage? Is that what you're saying, or?
Well, with the quantity, with the sizes limitations of the containers, but not to exceed the lot coverage.
Well, 5 acres, you'd have to have a lot of building
Well, that's
to reach the
so it would
50%.
never-
So you'd never reach it, basically.
No, but if
Well,
it were, but if
Never
it
say
were-
never, I guess.
If it were a,
That's not that as a
if you had a
challenge.
triple wide, if you had a triple wide on one of these small lots, well, then they might be close to their
Allowed
to
the
their lot,
usage already.
their lot coverage already. So they may not be allowed to even have a container. Again, we're going with the setbacks and lot coverage. Does that sound right?
Well, my thought was, I don't know what the lot coverages are here, but it seems reasonable if you're already allowing it with other structures. How else are we going to enforce it? Are we going to have two different, standards?
Well, the only way we would enforce that is if they come in, we would have to have them list off all the others that they had as well as their house, and we'd have to do a calculation every time they wanted to add another one.
That is true.
So do we move into commercial now?
I was just looking at what percentages. So you're less than 10%. I mean, right? For if you're taking an acre and you can have 320 square feet.
1% of an acre in square footage is 435.6 square feet.
1%.
1%.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, there's 43,560.
That's right. 43,000.
33,560.
All right.
Yeah, so 1% is 435% or square feet, excuse me. So if you said 1% of your property, I mean, that as your acreage went up, that would allow you more.
So it shouldn't be an issue. For the
What's
most
that?
part. A container should not be an issue. As far as you're not reaching anywhere near your.
So you're saying that with two containers on a property, you're less than 1%.
Yes, sir. So if you did if we came up with a percentage of your property coverage allowed for containers, then as your acreage went up, the more containers you could have. So if you had 2.5 acres, you could have 1,200 square feet or whatever. Like my mouth's not working, so yeah, 1,350, something like that, in containers. If you had 2.5 acres.
Well, we already doubled it from the SR1 to the.
Yeah, we did double the square footage, but I'm saying if you did the 1%,
Yeah. It's
that would be the same. That's even more. That's even more.
Okay.
And then it wouldn't matter the size. It's just, why are you looking at me like that?
No,
Am I
I'm
confusing you?
confused.
A little
Yeah.
bit.
No, I'm-
1% of an acre in square feet is 435 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
If I may, I think what the mayor is saying is set a flat percentage of lot that can be covered by storage containers. And then as your size of lot increases, regardless of the zoning, you're allowed more. So if you have a 10-acre site and you're allowed 5% coverage, then you're allowed,
Let's
quite
go with, if 1% coverage.
4,350, yeah,
Will be 4,350 square feet roughly.
of storage container that you could put on your property. Whereas an SR 0.16 who had, let's just say, half an acre, you're looking at 10% of that.
Which
So
would be 270
2,500
square feet, something
yeah.
like that.
I like the
250, yeah.
percentage idea because it seems a little less restrictive in the sense of you have under an acre, you can only have one. You have this, okay, you can have two. I like the percentage factor. Just my
If you have 10
go-to.
acres, you'd have 12 containers, about 12, 13 containers.
As long as they all
That's a lot of containers.
painted
Well,
the
the
same
thing
color.
is-
of the
But
house.
10 acres is a lot of property.
The thing is, I look at that the same as, the state allowances, if you have a domestic water well, you can't pump any more than 35 gallons a minute, 24 hours a day. Nobody does that. How many people are going to put 12 40-foot containers on their property? You might find some, but
Councilmember Perkins said it was a challenge.
I'm maxed out at 4, okay? Maxed out at 4. And they're not moving.
I think people are going to put on what they need, but
Yeah.
there's always going to be one. But I think that as far as being fair to a property owner, I would have to say that I think the percentage thing works.
Does that work enforcement wise?
Yeah, we would just have to calculate how much they have. If we make the percentage based on storage containers already, then it's easier than a total lot coverage percentage. The calculation is different. So
You like that idea, Will?
So we're going
yeah, I would prefer a flat percentage as opposed to the other.
1%? Is that what we were discussing?
I think 1%. I mean, who needs more than,
1% painted all the same color, earthy or matching the structure with the proper setbacks. Everyone's covered.
We could do that with a sunset clause, give it 2 years, and if you get complaints and people don't like it, then we can revisit it.
Okay. Now, does this apply into commercial? What's your thought?
If you want, we can add a percentage for commercial as well. A lot of commercial lots are a lot smaller than 1 acre. I mean, Chino has a lot of 1 acre commercial lots just because of the water issue.
And the number of complaints is pretty overwhelming to get it here for this amount of time, isn't it?
Right. So commercial is going to be a little bit different because site plan review, I'll just read you the conditions. So
I swear we already did
no.
this. I know we already
What'd
did
you say?
this.
Yeah.
Maybe let's just kick the can.
what's that?
it's been a common theme since I got here. I
Right.
think. Okay, so site plan review. Let me find here. Site plan is required for all new construction, exterior site and structure alterations, signs and subdivision plats prior to issuance of a building permit, including town facilities, with the following exceptions. And the only exceptions that it excludes are accessory structures with single-family zoning districts, single-family residences on separate lots, minor exterior site and structure alterations that do not materially affect the design concept or function of the site or structure, repairs that do not alter the design of the structure, or approved temporary construction offices. So anytime somebody would want to put a construction, Conex box, Conex box on their property, they are increasing the size and use of the property, which would trigger the site plan review. So at that point, they would submit site plan review. We would verify setbacks, parking, that they're not taking up required parking. We could start requiring that they add a proportionate amount of landscaping based on the total square footage that they're adding. That right now, if you approve the Conex box, it would trigger site plan review.
For commercial.
Commercial or industrial.
Okay. Going back to what we were talking about before, I would be in favor of putting in there that one story, you can't stack them.
Yeah.
Without, otherwise you're creating a structure when you stack.
And you can't pile garbage on top of them.
No.
Tires and.
Where am I gonna put my tires?
You're what?
Sure.
I'm kidding.
We're taking a 5-minute for Corey. Anybody else need a bathroom break? Have at it.
It's 7:13.
Yeah. But the thing nice, if we spend all our time here now, then what Tuesday night when this comes up is just like done.
This is absolutely the hardest.
And we're not gonna gather this coming
Because I've
Tuesday.
always been an anti-regulation
No
person.
council this next Tuesday.
And here I am.
Only had two.
The guy
One
can't
consent
I
and
mean,
one.
What do we do about the ones that
Don't
are
matter.
here?
You
You
know,
know,
Doesn't bother me.
I'm
You
still
know,
on
you know, bookkeeping.
Yeah,
and
so-
item on consent.
Our mics are still hot, just so everyone knows.
What's that?
We're still being recorded and being at home. Hi, everyone.
He's got a jump.
Oh, did I say something?
Contact.
No, but
Yeah, you're always going to have somebody
It's a
who
former
doesn't take care of their
councilman
place.
that's got a railroad
Whether
car
it's-
on his lot.
Whether
It
it's
still says
a
B and M
small
and
lot
SF on it.
in a place like Chino Meadows, you know, you can go in and you can have a neighbor that's just got this awesome yard, bird feeders, and you know, that little fountain, and they really spend a lot of time on it, and then somebody that does nothing. So
They're not allowed at all. So this would allow us to allow them, but a placement of the Conex box alters the exterior side, which would trigger. site
Man, my
plan.
bulb is bulb.
Yeah, you're flashing. I'm out of the scene.
Once the-
Yours
Yeah, I'm not as bad as
nicely
yours.
tan.
At least I got the sideburns. I got high sideburns.
Wrap around.
Hey, Josh, I'm curious, I think of that same, what you're explaining there, what exactly triggers a site plan?
Okay, so anytime anybody with commercial or industrial property alters the exterior of the site or the exterior of the structure would trigger site plan review, except for minor alterations and minor repairs.
what's the definition of exterior of the site? Not the.
So outside of the building,
Explain that
on
to
the
You say
site.
structure, we're calling a container structure.
So the exterior site is anything outside of the building on the property on which the commercial business is located.
So in reality then, if I had just whatever out there and I decided I want to go and put in rock landscaping, would that require a site review?
Would the rock landscaping be for minor exterior site structure alterations that do not materially affect the design concept or function of the site? Then I would say that that is excluded. It's exempt.
So no.
Okay, if you were just parking on a piece of commercial property, you have now altered the use.
No, not necessarily. So the use of the property already has parking spots allocated for that business.
No.
So what are you?
You jumped way up to business. If somebody is parking on a piece of commercial property, it's completely bare, except they're parking something on there.
What are they parking there?
Anything,
I can't answer
Mean
that
vehicle
question.
one?
a vehicle. They park a pickup there.
For the purpose of what? Are they just staying the
A
night?
motor home on there, a boat on there.
Well, that's an
they're-
RV, so
Well, they're just have a park there.
Well, what's the primary use of the property? If it's just parking that RV, I would say you need to go through site plan review to get permission for an RV storage lot.
Okay,
Freedom.
Yeah. freedom.
so this is, you're actually going in a direction that I like. I see a lot of commercial property that has people that's being used. And it may be just having a motorhome and a boat parked on a piece of commercial property. Yeah, it may be, they come in and they park their dump truck in the back of it. Or, you see outside storage there,
That's temporary though.
but it's still on commercial property.
So if,
So is that now, that property is now being used? So if there is basically any activity on that property, that should be a site plan review trigger.
well, I would have to determine why they're parking there, what the purpose of them parking there is for. If it's related to, it has to be part of the list of uses. Right? So if somebody's just, they have an RV and they're going there to pull weeds or to clean up their yard and they took the RV for just a couple hours, then.
No, the RV is parked there
Really?
permanently.
They own the
I see
land.
it there day in, day out.
Do you, after this meeting, do you want to let me know? So maybe we can stay on topic
I can show you
for
where
open meetings.
so many commercial properties, and actually this is something that should be up in one of our future UDOs, was minimum requirements for,
I could go on a
Commercial
drive with
property.
you and you could kind of point out, how
So-
about that?
We're getting.
If I can just go ahead and interrupt, I think we're getting
Way.
off topic.
Way
Let's
off
go
topic.
way back and
so
Continue
when we
with-
put just a Connex box on there, it's now the same thing. We're now using it for something.
Well,
yet again, I
Just-
still think we're going off of the property use, and I think that's over and above what should be talking about is with regard to outdoor storage in the meetings. So that might
Okay.
be for a later conversation if we're going to talk about property uses and
wanna-
what's allowed and what is not.
yeah, you can come by my office, we can talk.
Okay. So what quantity of containers can we put on commercial property?
I would recommend setting a percentage, like before, it would make it a lot easier.
0.25 with the proper setbacks.
0.25%.
That's nothing. 0.25? A quarter of a percent.
Well, it's 1% on the.
Huh?
That's 1% on residential, right?
Yeah, so you're going
Or
less.
Or commercial.
Phone won't work.
Yeah, I would think that commercial, in a lot of cases, depending on business, but commercial could possibly have more of a use for container than even a residential. For auxiliary storage.
That's 108 square feet
What,
on an acre.
So they get a 6x4.
what
That's
is
not
that?
even
How many
the
containers
minimum.
per acre? How many containers per acre does that come out to?
With 108 square feet, that's a half a container.
Yeah.
That's a 10 by 10,
Well, that's
or
the
10, 8 by 10.
on the lot size, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm talking about on an acre.
That's on an acre.
Oh, 1 acre, okay.
At 1/4 of 1%.
That's at a
Yeah,
quarter.
we decided
We were having an
1%,
arbitrary conversation.
1% total on any acreage for residential. 1%.
That's what we said for residential. And that was 435 square feet, if I remember it.
Yeah.
What would be the, why can't we use the same 1% for a commercial?
And that comes out to how many containers per acre? Back
Two.
it the other way for me.
2.
That would allow 2.
Yeah, roughly. Well, 20 by 20 or 8 by 20 is
8 by 4.
160. 8 by 40,
40 is
320
320.
that's 140.
per acre.
320.
I mean, well,
That's-
you might get
That's nothing for commercial.
$5%?
so 320 And then you got 160. That's 480. So you'd be limited. You could only put a max on an acre.
What about
of
5%?
a 8x40. I'm sorry,
5% of commercial property.
5% commercial? That's a lot if it's an acre.
But
See, and this is where I was going before. I see it, at least visually, I see a difference. I don't think that a piece of commercial property on our highway frontage, I don't see it being advantageous for us to allow a half a dozen 40-foot cargo containers parked there.
I agree.
But Mr. Bunker that lives next to Corey that has a yard that's just a trucking storage yard, doesn't even have a building there. It's off the beaten path. It's not right there in everybody's face. And it's a fairly clean lot because he's got 6 cargo containers in there that he keeps all his stuff in.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with that when they're zoned the same?
We spoke about the commercial corridor of the 89. I'm telling you, hand to God, about them being painted the same as the building, being adjacent to the building, so not in front of the building, but adjacent to or behind
it,
and screened in. And that was specifically for the 89. That wasn't for different land shops uses.
Anyway, 5% is,
Can't we split them?
That's what I'm pretty much asking is how do we differentiate for the good of our,
Right.
our
Beautification.
We can add in an H and add in that all on SR 89 will be restricted to the following and add in additional requirements that they need to meet.
it'd be nice to see some of those places that are on 89 have their stuff in containers.
Yeah.
You know.
And it doesn't apply to temporary containers like Chino Heating and Cooling had an office container put in the front of their property while they were working on their building.
That's a mobile.
That's a mobile. Yeah, it was a mobile.
Yeah, it was a mobile home, and our code already allows individuals to put a manufactured home or a mobile home, RV or whatever, on the property while construction occurs, and then it has to be removed.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a way of doing that. Putting an H there, on for the highway, the frontage corridor.
Can't be considered in the street.
So
Behind. Annie,
If you did-
5% is 2176 square feet. I'm sorry.
It's a decent amount of square feet.
So the 3 per acre
Divide that by
off of the
320.
highway, I would think, does that sound sufficient?
three
to-
per acre off the highway.
Off the highway.
Well, what are you thinking for on the highway?
I don't know about that one yet.
How about the guy you're talking about that has the place next to you that has the 4 or 6? They're neatly, proper, blah, 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 out of sight, not causing anybody any grief.
Mhm.
That would just blow him away. He'd have to move everything.
Well, he wouldn't have to move it, but somebody move it because he's already there.
So are you saying 3%?
No,
Is that the 3 that you're talking about?
If it's 1% per container on an acre,
Pretty close. It's less than that, but yeah.
yeah, at 5%, you can get 6 containers per acre.
so 3%.
I don't know, I have to do the math for that one.
Well, that would be half. It would take
Yeah,
it
it'd be
from
about
6 to
2.
3.
2 to 3.
Well, it'd be, this is almost 7, actually. It's 6.80 containers per acre at 5%.
So I was thinking that I don't really think that on an acre piece of property, even on the highway, if it's kept behind the building, that 2 40-foot containers is too much.
I don't think so.
So I don't know what that comes out to percentage. It's probably, will it be 2% or less than 2%? So
Divided by,
And then on the, on the storage yards, like next to you, I don't know what you do for sure.
At 3%.
What a concern that I haven't brought up is I know that there was a guy that was trying to create a mini storage place using containers. I don't want that to become, allow that amount of containers that they could actually,
And I think that that's realistic. I think taking, even on a place like Bunkers next door to you, of saying, okay, 4 containers is going to be close to 1,500 square feet, or between 12 and 1,500 square feet. If you need more storage than that, it's time to build a building.
Yes.
At 3%, you're allowed 4 containers, 4.08 containers at 3% per acre.
If you want 2, it's 1.5. All right, I think I would be good with that.
You said it was 1.5, Frank, for 2 on an acre. So if we put a cap of 2%,
So you want the 1.5%, which is the 240s, or you want to give them?
Is that what it comes right out to?
Comes out to 1.46. So yeah.
I'd like the buffer.
So 1.5%, half of the 3% when it's on SR 89.
And then that would, if you had a half acre commercial, you would be allowed 1.
That's fair.
So I would be okay with the 1.5 myself. And then the 3% for the off highway. And there again, if you need more storage than that, it's time to build a building.
Agreed.
Okay, cool.
Because I also see, I quite often see Connex boxes set up behind established businesses, and I don't know exactly what some of these retail stores use them for. Whether it's overflow stocking or what.
Well,
excess inventory.
Well, how long was that Circle K for? How long did they have theirs there?
What's that?
Circle K, had theirs for the longest time there.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. What I do know though is that we don't allow accessory uses on a property that don't have a primary use. So any property that doesn't have a primary use, we wouldn't be allowing Connex boxes on anyway. The only lots or uses that don't require a building that I can think of are like contractors' yards in commercial heavy. Those would be the only ones I can think about.
Which is basically what Bunker is, right?
Yeah, that's what.
So the contractor's yard is the primary use. The accessory would be the Connex boxes used for storage of materials or storage of whatever. But if you have a vacant piece of property with no use on it, and you're like, I just want to put Connex boxes on there, I'm like, well, sorry. You have to have a primary use first. Storage of Connex boxes, in my opinion, is accessory.
So you're saying for a commercial heavy lot that was just a contractor yard, they would be allowed?
Yes.
Right, because their primary use, which is a contractor's yard, requires no building. They're storing their materials, they're storing their trucks, and then they load up the trucks and then they leave. So as you said, there's no reason for a building per se.
What is the zoning there?
I would guess commercial heavy.
It is heavy? Okay.
Otherwise, it's non-conforming.
So then does that make him unlimited
No,
in commercial heavy?
no, it would still be regulated by the 3%. But he'd be allowed to have it without a building.
Okay.
Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, I would allow it to be there if his primary use is a contractor yard instead of.
And then if a person really had a justifiable reason to have more than that, they could come to you and request, and it could be brought forward under a CUP.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
Good.
High five.
What kind of reasons are we talking?
I don't know. I'm just
Is it
saying.
anything?
Yeah, I have no idea what someone might come up with, but someone may come up and if they can convince the council that it's justifiable to do so, then the council
Could
can
use
say.
an extra 40 just to stash the old lady stuff.
So a CUP,
Say old
Call it
lady?
stuff and not just old lady.
so the CUP allows council to add in additional conditions such as screening, landscaping.
Sure.
There's a list of them that you're allowed to do to mitigate sound, noise, odor. There's a whole list.
Okay, Josh, anything else you need from us?
Oh, there's a lot, but not for tonight.
All right, then.
I'm not- I'm not-
Can you just sum up what we agreed on?
Sure.
I'm sorry, you're not done.
No, go ahead.
You want me to sum it up?
Yeah, summarize what we just agreed on.
Okay, so for the residential zones, we are going to rewrite it to allow for a total of 1% of the total square footage of the lot to be used for Conex boxes. We're going to include a sunset clause. The Conex boxes need to meet the maximum setbacks instead of the less restrictive accessory setbacks. And then on the commercial, it'll be 3% for those commercial and industrial properties that are off the highway. There has to be a primary use on the property. One story, not stacked, no junk stacked on top. H would be on SR 89 properties that face 89. They will be required X, Y, and Z with regards to design reviews such as painting, screening, landscaping, etc. They will be allowed 1/2 of the regular commercial industrial, so 1.5%, which is equivalent to approximately 2 40-footers. And then if they don't have a primary use, but there may be some extenuating circumstances, they can come through a CUP. That cover it?
And there, one thing I didn't hear, but if a person has 2 Connex boxes, is there a regulation saying they can't connect them with the roof?
That's building code. So if they do it, then code enforcement will be out there anyway.
Okay, just as long as it's covered. Your turn, if you're done. You started to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not gonna look or talk about another Conex box until he gets this written up and he does it. Nothing else starts going on in my brain about it.
I have one for sale. It doesn't have a top on it. Just trying to get it out of my yard.
Swimming pool.
Yeah.
It really, it has no.
Lonnie, you
trying
wanna
to get
adjourn
it out
us?
of my
Dig a
yard.
hole.
Yep, I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Maid, we're out of here. We're not gonna vote. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.